Hi all, Aid from RevMonkey here. In today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 20 most expensive cars ever sold at an auction. Now there may be some surprises in here, but you'll be aware of some of the obvious candidates. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Now first up, just outside the list at number 21, I thought I had just include this because it's obviously so special. Lewis Hamilton's 2013 Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 W04-04 was its moniker. It was sold by Sotheby's for $18,815,000 in November 2023. So that's just last year as I'm making this video. It's actually the second most valuable Formula 1 car ever, and the only Mercedes-AMG Formula 1 car owned outside of the team. And you might never ever get a chance to have bought this again. So whoever bought this at that $18 million, as bad as it sounds, it might actually be a bargain. Now 2013 was Hamilton's first year of driving for Mercedes, and he participated in 14 out of 19 events during that year and ended up winning the 2013 Hungarian Grand Prix. So this car started it all for the record-breaking relationship that Hamilton had with Mercedes. And all I really think about when I see this car selling is, why did Lewis Hamilton buy it himself? He surely has the money, and it's an incredibly special car to him as well as the rest of us. At number 20, kicking things off, we have an Alfa Romeo, a beloved marque, which actually goes further back, would you believe, than Lamborghini and Ferrari. 1939 Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B Touring Berlinetta. It was sold by Art Curial for $19 million in February of 2019. Happens to be the fastest production car built before World War II. Obviously that's pretty close, 1939. And it's one of 5 with coachwork by Touring. Alfa Romeo at that time were cars to have. But number 19 is another Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B. This is a Lungo Spider. This was sold by RM Sotheby's in August of 2016 for $19.8 million. I mean, look at this. I mean, sometimes often coupes take the laurels. They're kind of a more solid car, the chassis flex. And sometimes the smooth shape of a coupe is the highest aesthetic you can achieve, but sometimes the drop it just looks fabulous, and this is one of them. I don't know which one you prefer, the previous one or this one. Now they only built 12 of these 8-seat 2900B Touring Spiders, so this is extremely rare, and you can start to understand why they're so valuable and so respected by dealers, traders and collectors, because it's just a snapshot of time. 1939, pre-World War II. It's hard to believe a car is this amazing at that time. Wow. Oh my God. Next up, I mean, any petrolhead knows this. At a glance, it's pretty bloody obvious what it is, but maybe not the exact model. This is a 1994 McLaren F1 LM. It was sold by RM Sotheby's for $19.805 million in August 2019. So we all know this. I mean, just 106 of these Gordon Murray designed F1s were produced in total. And to honour their Le Mans participation in 1994, 5 LM street ready versions were produced. This is just one of 2 with the extra high LM spec downforce package and the unrestricted 680 horsepower BMW V12 engine, which delivered 1,000 revs per minute more at the top end than the standard 618 bhp unit before. I mean, blimey. That's 62 bhp uplift, so that's 10% more power. It was originally delivered to Japan in 1994 to a lucky owner, and it was actually upgraded by McLaren to this LM spec in 2001. It's one of only 2 examples modified by the factory to this LM specification. Interestingly, it was originally finished in midnight blue pearl over a black interior, but I must admit, in this colour, it does look rather spectacular. Now, like 2 others in a row, quite incredibly, there's now 2 McLaren F1s in a row. This one's a 1995, a year later McLaren F1, not an LM spec. This was sold by Gooding & Co. for 20.465 million in August 2021. It's the only F1 finished in Creighton Brown. That's a colour named in homage to a director of McLaren cars. This one's incredible. I mean, what it's worth now, it's only done 390 kilometres from new. Basically, it's a new car that's basically not been driven. I mean, you have to assume the new owner has not driven it either. Perhaps, well, down the bottom of his driveway. It seems mad to have such an incredible car and not drive it. But of course, at this price level, it's basically high-end art. It's no longer a sports car. It's a collectible bit of art that just happens to resemble a car. And as such, like you wouldn't take a painting out for a walk in the park, you wouldn't take one of these cars out because the chance of any damage happening to it. And don't forget, these are now almost, they're so damn rare that if the thought of anything happened to these cars is actually too hard to bear. Of course, if one of these cars ever gets written off, the value of all the other cars goes up by a couple of million. It's so silly. I remember that about a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, an Enzo crashed. And immediately all Enzo prices jumped up by somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. What? Mad, isn't it? Well, next up, our first Aston Martin, a 1963 Aston Martin DP215, sold by RM Sotheby's for $21.455 million in August of 2018. Now this is a one-off works Aston Martin racing car. DP215 Grand Touring competition prototype. It was raced by Phil Hill and Lucien Bianchi at the 1963 Le Mans. At that point, it was famous for clocking up 198.6 miles an hour on the Mulsanne Straight, so almost hitting that 200 miles an hour mark in 1963. And also, it's the final David Brown competition Aston Martin. The car became the first car to officially break the 300 kilometres per hour barrier. However, unfortunately, the car was prone to gearbox issues throughout its racing life. But yeah, fabulous looking car, and it just reeks of money. At number 15, sweet Jesus. Look at the curves on this thing. This is a Jaguar, in my opinion, that matches the Testarossa and the 412 and the P3, P4 for the car with the sexiest curves known to man and beast. My goodness me. For those older men watching this, it's a Sophie Loren. For the younger men watching this, it's probably a Gal Gadot, a Margot Robbie, or some other fabulously attractive, perfect actress. This is a 1955 Jaguar D-Type, sold by RM Sotheby's for $21.78 million in August of 2016. I mean, wow. Oh, God. It's just an incredibly famous overall winner of Le Mans. It won the 1956 24-hour du Le Mans. It raced in this fabulously famous Écurie Écosse colours of Scotland. That's not so easy to say. Écurie Écosse colours of Scotland. An eventful race. It started with 49 cars, with only 14 cars finishing, and unfortunately there was one fatal crash. Good God, what a car. It's almost certainly the Jaguar of all Jaguars ever created. Comparably, just 250 horsepower, obviously fairly light, 3.5 litre roughly, overhead camshaft, inline 6-cylinder engine, 3 Weber carburettors, a 4-speed manual transmission, independent front suspension and 4-wheel disc brakes, as you'd expect of that era. At 14, one for the Americans watching this video. With outrageous power. Typical just American big block engines. This is so early on. This is a 1935 Duesenberg SSJ, sold by Gooding & Co. for $22 million in August 2018. That was first owned by the movie star Gary Cooper, which might not mean anything to you if you're younger than me, but I have heard of him and I can actually picture him. This car, unbelievably, has a 400 horsepower straight 8 engine. That's right, you heard me. 400 horsepower in 1935, wrapped up in that magnificent shell. I mean, can you imagine how fast this went in that era and how it must have sounded and the attention it must have garnered? I mean, unbelievable. I mean, selling at $22 million made it the most valuable American car ever. It was one of only 2 SSJs built. It had a special short wheelbase chassis and a supercharged twin carb engine. 32 valve, 8-cylinder engine, of course, with a 3-speed manual gearbox and 4-wheel hydraulic drum brakes. Oof. Oh, wow. Right, we now start to move into a huge sequence of Ferraris. Obviously, it's the mark. It always will be. Nothing's ever going to overtake it in terms of rating heritage, prestige, kudos, beauty, drama, racing drivers. Oh, now, especially now Lewis Hamilton's going to Ferrari. God, I hope he wins. Flipping out, wouldn't that be amazing to take the 8th and cement himself as the GOAT in 3 different cars? Oh my God. Oh my God, I can't wait for that. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, at number 13, a 1956 Ferrari 290mm, sold by Mille, by the way. Sold by RM Sotheby's for 22.005 million, just above the last one, in December 2018. I mean, I just mentioned 2, well, one word, Fangio. That's right, you've definitely heard of him. The late, great Fangio drove this 290mm, along with the likes of Phil Hill, and when under private ownership, Sterling Moss, or Sir Sterling Moss now, of course. I mean, Fangio, Hill, Moss. I mean, just literally, in terms of cars of that era, you can't beat that. It raced as an official Scuderia Ferrari works car for both the 1956 and 57 seasons. The final of 4 examples built, and among only 3 surviving examples. So, wow. One of those cars, it's just going to go up in price. I mean, I'm almost quite surprised to see it down here at only 22 million. I suspect now it'll be a $30 or $40 million car, because people they missed the boat and might have missed the auction, and 6 years have gone by since 2018. Things have changed. There's people out there who didn't have stupid money, who've now got stupid money. Oh. At number 12, a 1955 Ferrari 410S. This was sold by RM Sotheby's for $22.005 million as well in August 2022, so fairly recently. It's another Scuderia Ferrari team car, driven by Juan Manuel Fangio. At the 1956 1,000 kilometre Buenos Aires, where he was actually born. That's right, he wasn't Italian. A lot of people think Fangio sounds and is Italian and is famous for being in a Ferrari, so he's Italian, but no, actually Argentinian. So Brazil had Senna, Argentina had Fangio. Carroll Shelby himself drove this car during the 1956 and 1957 seasons. Obviously, you all know about Carroll Shelby. If you haven't watched the recent films about him, then he's just a legendary figure in the world of sport at that time. And one of his fabulous quotes is that Mr. Ferrari told me that this was the best Ferrari he ever built. Who'd eat doubt the mighty Enzo, backed up by Shelby. Wow. Only Aston Martin and Mercedes break up the Ferraris in the top 12. This is a 1959 gorgeous Aston Martin DBR1. This was sold by RM Sotheby's for $22.55 million in August of 2017. Now, Aston Martin built just 5 of these DBR1s, and this one was the first, raced by another great name list: Roy Salvadori, Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham, Carroll Shelby, amongst others. DBR1/1 won the 1959 Nürburgring 1,000 kilometre race and was the sister car to the DBR1 that won Le Mans in that same year. How much is that worth? Very likely this is the most important model in Aston Martin's history. It also just happens to look bloody fabulous in that green colour. Oh my God. So here we go, the top 10. Of course it's a Ferrari. Now I've seen a couple of his 275s at Joe McCarry's in Wandsworth in London recently. Fabulous car, overshadowed a bit by the 250, but a magnificent Ferrari in its own right, and of course the evolution of the 250. This is a 1964 Ferrari 275 GTB /C Speciale, so original Speciale. Sold by RM Sotheby's for $26.4 million in August 2014. Oh, blimey, it's 10 years ago. This could be worth a lot of money now. Now the regular 275 GTB is special, but just 3 of these works prepared Competizione editions were produced. Wow. 320 horsepower, 3.2 litre lightweight block V12 engine with 6 Weber carburetors, a 5-speed manual, transaxle transmission, 4-wheel upper and lower wishbone coil spring independent suspension, and 4-wheel disc brakes. So a bit of a jump on from the preceding cars that we've talked about. Absolutely stunning car. Controversially, I think it actually isn't outdone by the Spider version, which comes next at number 9, also sold by RM Sotheby's. This one sold for $27.5 million in August of 2013, so it preceded it. A 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB/4 Nart Spider. This was one of 10 Nart Spiders built, famously bought new by a rags to riches trader called Eddie Smith from North Carolina. It's worth checking him out, Eddie Smith, because he's got a great story. Now, it's one of only 10 highly desirable Nart Spiders ever built, and this one was sold to benefit a charity. How fantastic is that? Now, the story of chassis 10709, one of the most famous and desirable Ferraris in the world, is as much about the provenance of the sports car as it is the remarkable life story of the gentleman who cherished it from the day he took delivery and from whose beloved family is now offered to the public for charity. This Eddie Smith. And amazing. Just check him out and check his car history out. At number 8, we have a 1956 Ferrari 290 Mille by Scaglietti. It was sold by RM Sotheby's for $28.05 million in December of 2015. Now, this one's also driven by Fangio, and he came full for the 1956 Mille. So it's an undeniable piece of automotive history. The 320 horsepower, 3.5 litre, dry sump V12 engine with triple Weber twin choke carburetors, Magneti Marelli distributors, 4-speed manual transmission, independent front suspension with helical springs and anti-roll bar, and 4-wheel hydraulic drum brakes. I mean, these works cars are considered the holy grail of Ferrari motoring. Another car in this last 9 years that's probably jumped up significantly in value. At number 7, it's a usurper. A 1954 Mercedes-Benz W196 sold by Bonhams for $29.6 million in July of 2013. So it's almost hitting the $30 million mark. Now, Mercedes built just 14 examples of the W196, and there is a total of 10 now left with us, existing on this fragile planet. Now, Mercedes owns 6 of those, and 3 are in museums, which left this car as the only W196 that was available to buy and possibly ever buy. I mean, what a fabulous, fabulous car. I've heard similar cars, similar engines, they sound berserk. Now, this 1954 Mercedes-Benz Formula 1 single-seated racing car was also driven by legendary 5-time world champion El Maestro Juan Manuel Fangio. Now, the price is almost double the previous record achieved by a Ferrari in 2011. I mean, wow. And an amazing story. Just wow. This Mercedes-Benz W196R Formula 1 racing car was given to the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu by Mercedes-Benz in 1973. Now, in 1987, Beaulieu sold the car with Mercedes-Benz approval to fund the museum, library and other buildings. But what a fabulous moment of generosity by Mercedes-Benz, and they've just gone well up my estimations for that. I'm a regular visitor to Beaulieu 2 or 3 times a year with the car events that I go to, with the car club that I'm in. And that's just a lovely thing to think about. And so far, just imagine sitting yourself in that single seater. We've all seen pictures of this or videos of this car hurtling around the track in anger. And I think it's the most evocative car so far, even above and beyond those Ferraris. It's just such an iconic shape of that era. It really sticks in my mind. Oh, oh my God. In number 6, the 1967 Ferrari 412p Berlinetta, sold by Bonhams for $30,255,000. So getting above that $30 million price tag in August of 2023. So a fairly recent sell. Now why I love this car, it's actually my favourite shape of every car ever made, along with 2 others, the Ferrari Testarossa, and one might be coming up. I mean, I'm talking about the old original 50s Ferrari Testarossa, and the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. These are 3 just ridiculously fantastic looking cars. And this car looks like the P3, P4, and I had 2 of these as Skeletrix models when I was a kid. Now this Ferrari became the most expensive car sold at auction ever in 2023 when it was sold during Monterey Car Week in California. Delivered originally to a British owner, would you believe? The car went on to a successful FIA and Le Mans racing career with drivers including Richard Atwood and David Piper. Previous subsequent owners of the car included the JCB owner Anthony Bamford, famous for his yellow diggers, but he had taste in other machinery clearly. This is basically a 4-litre 24-valve V12 engine, 6 Weber carburetors, 420 horsepower, 8,000 revs. Can you imagine it? 5-speed Ferrari manual transmission, independent suspension with unequal length wishbones, coil springs and anti-roll bar 4-wheel disc brakes. And the car secured vital championship points that helped Ferrari to win the championship in 1967. Just an absolute stunner of a car. This is the kind of Testarossa shape I was talking about. I'm not sure if Testarossa is actually here, but this is close enough. I mean, good God, look at that. A 1957 Ferrari 335S. This one was sold by Art Curial for $35.7 million in February of 2016. Built in 1957, number 0674 was first driven by Peter Collins and Maurice Trintignant in the 1957 Sebring 12-hour race. Then by Wolfgang von Trips in the Mille Miglia. Mike Hawthorne also drove the car in the Le Mans 24 Hours, and the car also competed in lots of high-profile races around the world. And it also included drivers like Sterling Moss. I mean, just unbloody believable car racing history this car's got. I mean, and it just looks like this. Ferrari's workshop equipped this model with a 4.1 litre V12 engine, giving it a massive 400 horsepower at that time, and enabling it to reach a top speed of 190 miles per hour, which is unheard of in 1957. Now you must read up about Peter Collins. He literally gave up his life to motor racing and should have actually been Britain's first ever F1 champion, which was actually Moss. It's such an amazing story. You may have seen him in the recent Ferrari movie. Peter Collins is an absolute legend and a gentleman, and highly revered amongst those who understand what he brought to the table. It's just a ridiculously pretty car, and it it just makes modern Ferraris look bloody stupid, in my opinion, and they're lovely. This is so beyond being another planet. This is another universe of car. Just utterly fabulous. Now, this raises the point of replicas, and there's a couple of replicas of Aston Martins and the D-types and these sort of Ferraris out there. And although in our hearts we don't like to think of replicas, and reproductions. It does give people a chance to see this shape, which is absolutely gobsmacking, takes your breath away, leaves you speechless. So I think there is a place for replicas, so long as they're mentioned that they're a replica or an evocation of what is and will always remain a fantastic historic model. Well, I won't be surprised to many people to see a Ferrari 250 GTO. We all know it's like probably the #1 car in history that you ever see come up for sale. Not far behind you get McLaren F1 and the other cars you see here. People don't kind of recognise them or remember them. It's only when you see them and think, oh yeah, okay, I can see why that one's worth $30 or $40 million. Now this is a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, and it was sold by Bonhams for $38.115 million, so almost reaching the 40 mark in August of 2014. I mean, these cars are kind of the ultimate acquisition for most collectors. I mean, just 39 250 GTOs were ever made, and they very, very rarely come up for sale. I mean, I've seen a couple of them, and obviously for a few times now I've seen Nick Mason's car at different sorts of events. He actually drives the car, he actually races the car. He's had it for a long, long time, decades, and he'll never part of it for sure. He's probably the most famous car on the planet. He's got the 250 GTO number plate. I mean, that plate's worth more than all the cars on my driveway, and I've got 4 nice cars. So the Ferrari 250 GT Omologato, which is Italian for homologation, it doesn't really need an introduction to us petrol heads, and is the car of all of our dreams. The GTO was actually developed to contest the 1962 3-litre class FIA GT World Championship Series of classical endurance racing events. This one doesn't actually even have a particularly special racing pedigree, so you can imagine what the top 250 race-winning GTOs might be worth. I mean, if one of them came on, we might see it go straight to #1, and we'll see what that is a bit later, although most of you probably already aware of what it is because it's fairly recent news. Now, the 250 GTO, I don't think it's the prettiest Ferrari personally, but what it has got is incredible presence, like the 412, the P3, P4. It just oozes racing pedigree, and it's a stunning looking car. Now, at number 3, another Ferrari 250 GTO. This one by Scaglietti. As you can tell, it's quite a bit different from the car before. This was sold by RM Sotheby's for $48.405 million in August of 2018. It's almost hitting the 50 million mark. $48.5 million basically. 6 years ago. This is an original 1962 machine, chassis 3413. It left the factory as a Series 1 example before gaining the ultra-rare Series 2 coachwork by Scaglietti in 1964. He went on to enjoy a successful racing career, competing in 20 races, finishing every single one of them, which is practically unheard of given the mechanical issues suffered by these highly tuned cars in that era. It's the 3rd GTO built. This example is considered by marque experts to be one of the most authentic and original of all GTO examples, despite that body revision, which strikes me as strange, but if it's done by the factory, then it makes it all the more special. It is actually one of 4 upgraded in period by Scaglietti with the Series 2 GTO. This actual car had 15 class and overall wins during the 1962-65 season. Not sure I'm a fan. It's not as attractive as the usual 250 GTO in my opinion, although it does make it appear kind of longer and more rakish, but nah, I think I prefer the other one. There we go. Number 2 is a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, again in 330 LM spec. This was sold by RM Sotheby's for $51.705 million in November 2023. It's the most expensive Ferrari ever sold at auction so far, but there's obviously some Ferraris which will probably smash #1 spot, never mind this Ferrari record if they came up for sale. It's the only GTO Tipo 1962 raced by the Scuderia Ferrari. Class wins and second overall finishes at the 1962 Nürburgring 1,000 kilometre race. It was driven by Mike Parks and Lorenzo Bandini for the Scuderia Ferrari team at the 1962 24 Hour of Le Mans. I mean, just looking at the pictures of this particular car, oh my God, it rivals the other nicer looking 250 GTO. But these pictures are fabulous. Good grief, what a car, what a thing. Here we are, finally at number one. Probably no surprise to many of you watching this, because it's such a famous sale back in 2022, 2 years ago, pretty much in the grips of COVID, of course. It's a Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe, sold by RM Sotheby's for $145 million in May 2022. That's some jump over number two, isn't it? $145 million for a car. Well, of course, it's much more than a car. Now, 1995 Mercedes-Benz SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe is the most expensive car ever sold. I remember the sale well and the ripples of interest it spread throughout the automotive world. A car had finally hit 9 figures, and incredibly, it was not a Ferrari. I'm sure we're going to see more 9-figure sales over within this kind of decade, and we'll probably see this price eclipsed. Now, this car was just one of 2 ever produced. It was previously owned by Mercedes-Benz, and the proceeds of this sale went to help establish a new charity. So how amazing and generous is that by Mercedes-Benz to give up one of these incredibly special cars to benefit a charity? I mean, fantastic. The car is named after its creator and chief engineer, Rudolf Uhlenhaut, who you can see in 2 of these pictures, and one of them along with his son. I mean, what a fabulous picture that is. It's considered to be one of the finest examples of automotive engineering and design ever, and many people believe it to be the best looking car ever made. And as you look at these pictures and look at the fluidity of design, notwithstanding it's not a Ferrari, because you want to believe a Ferrari is the best looking car, we all do, but take that Ferrari bias out of it, and I'm sure you'll start to appreciate and realise that this car is unbelievably slippery and attractive. The aesthetics are just in another realm. Although, I mean, what I personally believe, a couple of those Ferraris we saw, the curvaceous ones, just nick it for me personally. I'm not going to argue that I appreciate that many people think this is the better looking car and the best looking car ever made. This remarkably rare 300 SLR was based on the hugely successful W196R Grand Prix car, which you've already seen, which won 2 world championships in the hands of one Manuel Fangio, of course, but with its engine enlarged to 3 litres for sports car racing. The second original 300 SLR Coupe remains in Mercedes-Benz company ownership and will continue to be displayed at Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart. That car, we can be assured, will never ever be sold. Well, that wraps it up. Now, which car do you think was the best looking? Which car do you think is the car you'd most want sitting on your driveway for your friends to envy over? Which car would you most like to drive, if only for 30 minutes, to understand what that car was like? And for many, that might be the McLaren F1. It's very special to a lot of people in my generation. A lot of these cars we don't remember, we don't recall. They're before we're born. So I understand there's probably not that same sort of connection. But maybe you're just a pure petrolhead, and cars from that era, even going back to that 1936, or was it 35 Duesenberg, and the 1939 sports Alfa Romeos. Now, would you want to go back and sample a car of that era? Times have changed a lot, just in recent terms, we've moved to hybrid and electric vehicles. So it's really about emotion and nostalgia and aesthetic beauty driven by form that brought these amazing cars into this video for us today, and I'm happy to share them with you. And just going over this video, I'm probably going to watch it a few times back myself every so often, just to remind myself just how fabulous these cars were, and we're so lucky to have at least been able to see these cars in video form or movie form or in the flesh. And the world's a better place for us having experienced these cars. On that note, I will leave you. Drive safe, ride safe out there. 8 out.